Well, folks, it's just always such a pleasure to see this place fill up as we prepare for worship, as we all sing together in the morning, and just to see all of you moving around and visiting with one another, sharing worship and praise and fellowship with each other. It is just such a blessing and such a pleasure. I wish that all of you could see from up here how that all looks when you're all greeting each other. It's just a great, great sight. Good morning again. My name is Pastor Ian Boley. I'll add my welcome to Dennis's welcome. Those of you worshiping here, as well as those of you watching from afar today or on another day, on behalf of myself, Pastor Bob on the drums, and all of our other leadership here, thank you again. Thank you all again for worshiping with us. I keep telling myself that I'm ready for sweater weather, and I am outside. Sometimes I wear sweaters in here, but our heat has been really working well, so we haven't quite gotten to sweater weather on stage yet, but we'll get there. So this morning, we continue our mini-series on the different types of faith. We've explored faith during the tough times. We've explored faith during the good times. We've explored faith as a healing mechanism, as a tool for patience and hope, faith as a mode of thanksgiving, as a symbol of trust. Faith is a practice. It's a practice, and it's a calling to all of us, no matter how things are going in our lives. It's what keeps us grounded during all seasons of the year. So today we continue talking about faith, and we're talking about it, faith during normal times. It's about faith during those times when you respond to someone asking how you're doing with, I'm fine, not great, not terrible, just fine. Faith during average times. What are normal times, by the way? What are normal times to you? What do you think of as normal? What do you hold in your life to be normal? What things do you need, want, expect when you look for the normal in your life or in the world? We're talking about the daily life that is not without its problems, but it's also currently without tragedy, without crisis. Not great, not bad, just fine. The problems we deal with aren't overwhelming or non-existent. They're normal. Maybe normal is defined by simple workplace stresses. Maybe it's defined by simple week-to-week stresses like planning for family events, travel plans, monthly budgeting. We've got holiday stress coming up, don't we? Grocery shopping, managing calendars, scheduling appointments, watching football games, preparing meals, maintaining healthy habits, eating well, exercising, reading more, and so forth. Sometimes all these little efforts are going well. Sometimes they're going less than well. Not great, not bad, just normal. Going about our daily lives. So where does faith enter into that equation? Where does faith enter in here? If this is what we know as normal, then how do we bring faith into this milieu? If things are just fine right now, not terrible, not great, then maybe we don't need to be thinking about God very much. Maybe we don't really need to be saying prayers left and right. Maybe we don't really need to be worshiping every single day or every single week or even every month. When things are normal, do we really need faith? Now, Pastor Bob already touched on this last week. He talked about how maintaining faith is often more challenging during the good times than it is during difficult times. Difficult times have that way of bringing out faith in us. It's not easy, but that's often how it works. And I think that applies to these average times too. Even if there's no such thing as normal, really normal. Even if there's no such thing as a perfect average among the seasons of life, among the highs and lows that we go through. But whenever we're close to that middle line, whenever we're coasting along, not too high, not too low, we still need faith to sustain us. And it can be challenging. Now, I believe faith enters into these times in the form of discipline. Faith enters these times in the form of habit. Faith enters these times in the form of practice. Faith is a practice. Because as we talked about last week, when times are good or even when times are just average, it can be easy to let those habits slip away. It can be easy to fall out of practice or to replace it with something else. It can be easy to forget or neglect our discipline. Now, quick reminder here, and this is very, very important to Christian life. Discipline doesn't mean being punished or reprimanded for doing something wrong. Discipline here means staying focused on what matters most. Focusing on what matters most. The root of the word is literally disciple. Discipline for us means being a faithful follower of the way of Jesus and not letting other little things distract or get in the way. Faith is discipline, practice, habit. And Jesus tells a little parable about this. He tells several parables about faith, but one of them is commonly known as the parable of the unjust judge or the unjust steward. You've probably heard it before, but maybe not in a while. It's found in Luke chapter 18. And it goes like this. Jesus was telling them a parable about their need to pray continuously and not to be discouraged. He said, in a certain city, there was a judge who neither feared God nor respected people. In that city, there was a widow who kept coming to him, asking, "Give me justice in this case against my adversary." For a while, he refused, but finally said to himself, "I don't fear God or respect people, but I will give this widow justice because she keeps bothering me. Otherwise, there will be no end to her coming here and embarrassing me." The Lord said, Jesus, the Lord, said, "Listen to what the unjust judge says. Won't God provide justice to his chosen people who cry out to him day and night? Will God be slow to help them? I tell you, he will give them justice quickly. But when the human one comes, will he find faithfulness on earth?" And Jesus ends with a question right there. So that's a curious little parable. It's a curious parable. At first glance, it seems like the story is going to be about the unjust judge, about the judge receiving some kind of lesson or being an example to the listener or a warning of how not to exercise judgment. And in some ways it is that. That lesson is there. But more than that, this parable is about the widow who prays and petitions so earnestly and so faithfully that eventually the judge hears her cries and delivers what she is seeking. And the details about what she wants are kind of irrelevant. They're not in there, right? She's looking for some kind of reconciliation. And eventually she gets it from the judge. In other words, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? We've all heard that before. But this isn't just a lesson that we should always complain about everything that we don't like. That's not the lesson here. That's not what Jesus is teaching us. Some of us might like that. We might enjoy that. That's not what Jesus is teaching, though. Jesus is teaching us not to lose heart, not to lose faith, not to lose sight of our vision, our goals, our dreams, to be disciplined about it. God will answer the prayers of the faithful. So maybe the shorthand here, maybe it's not the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Maybe the shorthand is something more like, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God and God's righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you." put your trust in God and in God's timing, and your faith will be rewarded. Jesus here is contrasting the character and nature of the unjust judge with the character and nature of God as well. Now, Jesus does this a lot with the characters in his parables. He'll contrast one character with another character in his stories. But here, he's contrasting the unjust judge with God. God isn't an ungrateful steward who finally answers prayers just to be left alone because God doesn't like people. God is a caring and nurturing judge who desires what is best for God's children. And so in a world filled with injustices, human vengeance is not the way, but God's eternal grace is. That is how prayers are answered. That is how faith is rewarded. So even if things seem fine, normal, average, even if things aren't great but aren't terrible, we're not in crisis mode, but we're also not leaping for joy just yet, singing songs of thanksgiving. We still need persistent faith in our lives. We need it as a practice. We need it to keep ourselves rooted while we navigate our daily challenges. Faith isn't just the thing that gets us through the day. Faith is the thing that yields long-term results and meaningful changes in our lives. A couple of weeks ago, when we started this little mini-series, we talked a little bit about the prophet Jeremiah. Now, Jeremiah, as we mentioned, he was often called the prophet of doom. He's sometimes called the weeping prophet. Very powerful nickname, the weeping prophet. He goes through a lot of struggles. He has a lot of ups and downs. His faith is almost exclusively a faith of the bad times or the challenging times. Jeremiah barely knows what normal or average times feel like. And many of the prophets of his time couldn't have told you what normal is or what normal feels like, let alone what the good times feel like. And yet, even for Jeremiah, as with all prophets, there is a thread of hope. There's a thread of hope running through his story. And he has a vision of a new covenant with God, which will restore the people's faith and bind them to God forevermore. And we hear about that covenant in chapter 31. The time is coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the people of Israel and Judah. It won't be like the covenant I made with their ancestors when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt. They broke that covenant with me even though I was their husband, declares the Lord. No, this is the covenant that I will make with the people of Israel after that time, declares the Lord. I will put my instructions within them on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. They will no longer need to teach each other to say, know the Lord, because they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their wrongdoing and never again remember their sins. I will be their God, and they will be my people. They will no longer need to say, know the Lord, because they will all know me. I'll forgive their wrongdoing and never again remember their sins. That's about as hopeful as Jeremiah gets. That's the hope part. Again, like all prophets, Jeremiah is an example that good faith and patience are rewarded by the grace and love of God. And the funny thing is that oftentimes the nature of this reward isn't quite what we expect. It's not satisfaction for perceived wrongdoings. It's not finally getting revenge for something that offended us, right? It's not getting back at someone. Instead, it's coming to understand the nature of God once more. It's having our faith and trust restored, both in God and in God's creation. That is the reward. In other words, God has this beautiful way of rewarding faith with more faith. God rewards our trust with more trust. God rewards patience with more patience. That pattern, that practice, that discipline is how the normal times, the average times, the times when we're just fine, become times of celebration and thanksgiving once more. Love begets love. Hope begets hope. Peace begets peace. Faith begets faith. It's why spiritual discipline is so important. It's why prayer, service, worship, fellowship, outreach are all so important. It's because God is found in the midst of all of that. We may not always feel like we need God in our lives. We may not always feel like we need faith in our lives. We may feel like fine is good. Okay is okay. Average is enough. And normal is the goal. But in a life when we're not always sure what normal is anymore, in a world where normal can be hard to define and even harder to come by, maybe we shouldn't settle for normal. And we certainly shouldn't make the mistake of thinking normal means we don't need faith. Faith is its own reward, and it always has the power to turn the ordinary into the extraordinary, the mundane into the amazing, the mind-numbing into the astounding. Thanks be to God for that, and amen.